No one could challenge them until a Terran battleship entered the battlefield. Supreme Commander Varric stood at the bridge of the Dominion flagship Eternal Glory, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical display with practiced indifference. Another planetary system conquered, another civilization brought to its knees. The Zarn Dominion had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 3,000 years, and frankly, it was getting boring. Status report, Varric commanded, his voice carrying the distinctive rumble that all high-born Zarn possessed. Lieutenant Mira, his second-in-command, approached with a datapad. The Palaxian resistance has been crushed, Supreme Commander. Their capital ships attempted to flee to the Outer Rim, but our Hunter-class vessels intercepted and eliminated them all. Total casualties on our side, 0. Shocking, Varric replied dryly. I was so looking forward to writing condolence messages today. Mira blinked her 3 eyes rapidly, a sign of confusion among her species. Despite serving under Varric for 6 cycles, she still struggled with his sarcasm. The Threll were known for their technical brilliance, not their grasp of humor. Sir, there is no need for condolence messages if we suffered no casualties, she stated. Varric suppressed a sigh. Yes, Mira. That was the joke. The bridge crew maintained their focus on their stations, though Varric detected the subtle vibration of suppressed laughter from his weapons officer Draz. At least someone appreciated his wit. Begin planetary occupation procedures, Varric ordered. The standard package. Extract their resources, conscript the able-bodied, and install a puppet government. Be sure to activate the cultural suppression protocols. I don't want another uprising like the one on Nexus 9. Yes, Supreme Commander. Varric turned to gaze out at the stars through the massive viewscreen. The Palaxian homeworld hung in space below them, once beautiful with its swirling blue oceans and green landmasses, and now scarred by the precision orbital strikes of the Dominion fleet. It was the same story, repeated across hundreds of worlds. The Zarn Dominion would arrive, the locals would fight, they would lose, and the mighty war machine would grind on to the next target. Supreme Commander called out Senior Sensor Officer Trell from his station. I'm detecting an anomaly at the edge of the system. Varric barely turned his head. Anomalies were hardly worth noting these days. Specify. Sir, it appears to be a wormhole formation, but unlike any we have encountered before. It's extremely stable and wait. Something's coming through. Now that was slightly more interesting. Varric moved to the sensor station, his tall, slender form casting a shadow over the officer's displays. Put it on the main viewer. The massive screen shifted from the conquered planet to the distant edge of the system. A swirling vortex of energy had formed, purple and blue tendrils of light reaching out into the darkness. As they watched, something emerged from the center. A ship. A single ship. Varric almost laughed. Is this the best reinforcements the Palaxians could muster? One vessel? But as the ship fully emerged from the wormhole, Varric felt a strange sensation in his gut. The vessel was unlike anything in the Dominion database. It was massive, nearly half the size of the Eternal Glory, which itself dwarfed most capital ships. Its design was blocky and utilitarian, with none of the sweeping elegance of Dominion craft or other known species. Analysis, he ordered. Trell worked his console frantically. Sir, the vessel is heavily armored with materials I cannot identify. Weapons systems are numerous, but of unknown configuration. Our output is, this can't be right. What? What? Sir, if these readings are correct, their power output exceeds our flagship by a factor of 3. A murmur ran through the bridge. Varric silenced it with a glare. Hail them, he commanded. The communications officer Pell nodded. Channel open, sir. Varric straightened his ceremonial armor and faced the viewer. This is Supreme Commander Varric of the Zarn Dominion flagship Eternal Glory. You have entered Dominion space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed. The response was not immediate. For several moments, the strange ship simply hung in space, seemingly evaluating them. Then the screen flickered, and Varric found himself looking at an alien unlike any he had encountered before. The creature had no scales, no fur, no chitin. Its skin was smooth and pale, with only a patch of dark hair on top of its head. 2 eyes, 1 mouth, 2 arms primitively symmetrical. It wore some kind of uniform in dark blue with insignia Varric couldn't recognize. "This is Captain Thomas Jackson of the Terran Federation battleship Relentless," the alien spoke, its voice oddly flat compared to the musical tones of most spacefaring species. "We are here in response to a distress call from the Pelaxian government." Terran? Varric had never heard of such a species. He quickly checked his personal database. Nothing. "Aim." "You are too late, Terran," Varric replied, infusing his voice with the contempt he reserved for lesser beings. "The Pelaxians have already surrendered to the Dominion. I suggest you return to wherever you came from. The Zarn Dominion has ruled this sector for 3,000 years, and we do not tolerate interference." The human's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid we can't do that, Commander. The Pelaxians are now under Terran protection. You are hereby ordered to withdraw your forces from this system immediately." Laughter erupted across the bridge. "Akenchi." Even Varric couldn't contain his amusement. "Ordered? By you? One ship? Against a Dominion battle fleet?" He leaned forward. "Perhaps you don't understand your situation, Terran. We have conquered over 500 worlds. Our fleet consists of 30 capital ships and over 200 support vessels. Your bravery is admirable, but foolish." Captain Jackson still showed no emotion. "This is your final warning, Commander. Withdraw, or we will be forced to remove you." Varric's amusement turned to anger. "You dare threaten the Dominion? Weapons Officer Draz, target their vessel. Let's show these Terrans what happens to those who challenge us." "Targeting, sir," Draz replied, his tentacles dancing across his console. Disruptor banks charged. Quantum torpedoes armed. Varric smiled, baring his razor-sharp teeth. "Fire at will." The Eternal Glory's main disruptor banks discharged, sending brilliant green beams of energy toward the Terran vessel. Simultaneously, a spread of quantum torpedoes launched, trailing blue fire as they accelerated toward their target. What happened next would change the course of galactic history forever. Instead of attempting to evade, the Terran ship held position. A moment before impact, a shimmering field appeared around the vessel. The disruptor beams struck this barrier and vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed in a flash of energy as most shields would react, but simply ceased to exist. The quantum torpedoes, each capable of devastating a small moon, detonated against the barrier in spectacular fashion, yet when the explosions cleared, the Terran ship remained completely unscathed. Silence fell over the bridge. "Impossible," whispered Draz. On the screen, Captain Jackson's expression finally changed into what Varric would later learn was a smile. "I see you have made your choice. Very well." The transmission cut. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then Sensor Officer Trell shouted, "Energy spike from the Terran vessel. Massive weapons signature." The bridge rocked violently as something struck the Eternal Glory with devastating force. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship. "Damage report," Varric demanded, steadying himself against a console. "Forward shields down to 30% from a single hit," Mira reported, her voice rising with something Varric had never heard before: fear. "Whatever they hit us with, it nearly penetrated our strongest defenses in one shot." For the first time in his 300-year career as a military commander, Supreme Commander Varric felt a chill of doubt. He stared at the view screen, at the blocky, ungraceful Terran ship that had just accomplished what no other species had in 3 millennia. It had hurt them. "All ships," Varric commanded, his voice steady despite his growing unease. Concentrate fire on the Terran vessel. I want it destroyed. Now. As the Dominion fleet moved to engage the lone battleship, Varric couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. And not for the better. Fleet Admiral Jaezorn watched from his command vessel as the Dominion ships surrounded the lone Terran battleship. Summoned by the distress call from Supreme Commander Varric, a distress call from Varric of all people. Jaezorn had brought 3 additional battle groups to deal with this unexpected threat. 87 ships against 1, Jaezorn remarked to his aide, Commander Plex. Seems almost unsporting, doesn't it? Plex, a stout Zarn with battle scars across his face, nodded gravely. After what they did to the Eternal Glory, sir, I don't think we should take any chances. The Eternal Glory, pride of the Dominion fleet, was currently limping away from the battlefield, while its magnificent hull scarred by weapon impacts, unlike anything Jaezorn had seen in his 4 centuries of service. Nearly a third of its systems were offline, and Supreme Commander Varric had been forced to transfer his flag to Jaezorn's vessel, the Indomitable. What exactly are we dealing with here? Jaezorn asked as Varric entered the bridge, his normally immaculate armor dented and stained with the blue blood of injured crew members. Varric's expression was thunderous. They called themselves Terrans. They claimed to be here to protect the Palaxians. Their technology, he hesitated. It's beyond anything we have encountered. Impossible, Jaezorn replied automatically. The Dominion possesses the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. Tell that to my dead crew members, Varric snapped. Their shields simply nullified our weapons, and whatever they fired back would cut through our defenses like they weren't even there. Jaezorn turned to the tactical display. The Terran ship, the Relentless, it was called, remained motionless at the center of the Dominion formation, seemingly unconcerned by the overwhelming force arrayed against it. Have they attempted communication since your exchange? Jaezorn asked carefully. No, Varric answered. They are just sitting there. Perhaps they are waiting for reinforcements, suggested Plex. If that's the case, we should strike now, Jaezorn decided. Prepare all ships for simultaneous fire. If their defensive capabilities have limits, this should exceed them. The coordination took only moments through the Dominion's quantum entanglement communication network. 87 ships, from massive dreadnoughts to nimble destroyers, locked their weapons on the solitary Terran vessel. All ships report ready, Admiral, announced the tactical officer. Fire, ordered Jaezorn, his voice calm and confident. The space around the Relentless erupted with energy as hundreds of weapon systems discharged simultaneously. Disruptor beams, quantum torpedoes, plasma lances, and graviton pulses all converged on the Terran ship in a display of firepower that could have shattered a small planet. The ship's strange shields flared bright white under the assault, expanding outward before contracting inward. For a moment, Jaezorn thought they had succeeded, that the shields would collapse under the overwhelming barrage. Energy readings from the Terran vessel are fluctuating, reported the sensor officer excitedly. I think their shields are failing. But then the impossible happened. The white energy surrounding the ship pulsed once, twice, and then expanded outward in a perfect sphere, accelerating as it grew. This wave of energy passed through the Dominion ships like a ripple through water. And as it passed, systems failed. What's happening? Demanded Jaezorn as alarms blared across his bridge. Consoles sparked and went dark, view screens flickered and died, and the lights dimmed to emergency levels. Some kind of energy pulse, Plex reported, frantically working at his partially functioning console. It's disabled weapons, shields, and propulsion across the entire fleet. We are sitting targets. Jaezorn stared in disbelief at the main viewer, which showed the Dominion's mighty armada now floating helplessly in space. That's not possible. No weapon could affect so many ships simultaneously without destroying them. Sir, the communications officer called out, we are being hailed by the Terran vessel. Jaezorn exchanged glances with Varric, who looked as stunned as he felt. Put it through. The face of Captain Jackson appeared on the screen, still wearing that unsettling lack of expression. Admiral Jazorn, I presume? Captain Thomas Jackson of the Relentless. I wanted to inform you that we have temporarily disabled your fleet's offensive capabilities. The effect will wear off in approximately 6 hours, by which time I expect you to have begun withdrawal from this system. Jazorn bristled at the human's tone. You cannot seriously expect the Dominion to retreat because of one ship's lucky tactics. Jackson's expression hardened slightly. This wasn't luck, Admiral. This was restraint. The pulse we just used was specifically calibrated to disable rather than destroy. We could have just as easily turned your entire fleet into expanding clouds of plasma. He leaned forward. The Terran Federation does not seek conflict with the Zarn Dominion, but we will not allow the continued subjugation of peaceful species like the Palaxians. You speak as if you have the authority to dictate terms to an empire that has stood for millennia, Varric interjected. Who are these Terrans to make such demands? We are new to this sector, Jackson admitted, but not new to warfare. The Terran Federation has survived conflicts you couldn't imagine against enemies that would make your dominion seem like a minor provincial power. Preposterous, Jazorn scoffed. If your civilization possessed such power, we would have heard of you before now. Perhaps you should consider why you haven't, Jackson replied cryptically. 6 hours, Admiral. After that, if your ships have not begun to withdraw, we will be forced to take more permanent measures. The transmission ended. Jazorn turned to Varric, his mind racing. We need to contact the High Command. This changes everything. They are bluffing, Varric insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. One ship cannot stand against the might of the Dominion. Then why are we floating helplessly while they dictate terms? Countered Jazorn. Look at the facts, Varric. They neutralized your flagship with minimal effort. They just disabled our entire fleet without destroying a single vessel. That suggests a level of technological control we can't match. So we are just going to retreat? Varric's voice rose in disbelief. After 3,000 years of uncontested dominance? Jazorn gazed out at the stars, at his crippled fleet, and at the alien ship that had accomplished what countless civilizations had failed to do, bring the Dominion to its knees. No, he said finally. We are going to learn more about these Terrans. And then we are going to bring enough firepower to ensure their complete destruction. He paused. Signal the Phantom. Tell Captain Lizar to maintain stealth and follow the Terran ship when it leaves. We need to find out where these creatures come from. As the orders were relayed, Jazorn couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had suddenly become a much more dangerous place. And for the first time in the history of the Zarn Dominion, they weren't at the top of the predatory chain. Captain Lizar of the Phantom, the Dominion's most advanced stealth vessel, maintained a respectful distance from the Terran battleship Relentless. For 3 days he had followed the ship as it patrolled the Palaxian system, using the Phantom's experimental phase-shifting technology to remain undetected. Status report, Lizar demanded, his crimson scales gleaming under the dim bridge lights. Still no indication they have detected us, Captain, replied Stealth Officer Norak. Their sensor sweeps pass right through our phase field. Lizar nodded, pleased but still cautious. The Terrans had already demonstrated technology beyond Dominion understanding. He wasn't about to underestimate them now. What have we learned? Lizar asked his science officer, a female Zarn named Tadzia. Tadzia projected a holographic display in the center of the bridge. The Terran vessel's power source is unlike anything in our database. They appear to be using some form of matter-antimatter reaction, but contained in a way that defies our understanding of physics. Their hull composition includes elements not on our periodic table, and their communications. Yes? Lizar prompted when she hesitated. They have been in regular contact with someone or something through that wormhole they created. We can't decrypt their transmissions, but the energy signatures suggest they are transmitting massive amounts of data. Reporting back to their homeworld, Lazar mused, or perhaps requesting reinforcements. "Sir," interrupted the sensor officer, "the Terran ship is changing course. They appear to be heading back toward the wormhole coordinates." Lazar leaned forward in his command chair. "This could be our opportunity. Prepare to follow them through. If we can locate their homeworld." "Captain," with respect, Tazia interjected, "we don't know if our phase field will protect us within a wormhole. The gravitational stresses could expose us." "Noted," Lazar replied curtly. "But these orders come directly from Fleet Admiral Jazorn. The Dominion must know where these Terrans come from if we are to neutralize the threat they pose." As they watched, the space ahead of the Relentless distorted, twisting into the now familiar purple-blue vortex of their wormhole technology. The Terran ship accelerated smoothly toward the opening. "Match their course and speed," Lazar ordered. "Maintain maximum stealth protocols." The Phantom followed at a discreet distance as the Relentless entered the wormhole. As they approached the swirling vortex, Lazar felt an uncharacteristic nervousness. They were about to venture into completely unknown territory, following a vessel that had single-handedly humiliated the Dominion fleet. "Entering wormhole in 3, 2, 1, announced the helm officer. The sensation was disorienting. The Phantom shuddered as it was stretched and compressed simultaneously. The view screen showed swirling colors and impossible geometries as they traveled through space-time in a way no Dominion ship had experienced before. "The phase field fluctuating," shouted Norak. "We are becoming partially visible on certain energy bands." "Compensate," Lazar ordered. "I'm trying, but—" The wormhole journey ended as abruptly as it had begun. The Phantom emerged into normal space, its systems momentarily offline from the transition. As the view screen reactivated, Lazar's four eyes widened in shock. Before them hung a massive space station, easily 10 times the size of the largest Dominion construct. Around it moved dozens of ships of various designs, some similar to the Relentless, others completely different. And beyond the station, "By the First Emperor," whispered Tazia. "That can't be right." The sensors showed a planetary system unlike any they had encountered. The third planet from the central star literally blazed with energy signatures and artificial structures. Orbital platforms, defense satellites, and shipyards extended from the planet's surface out past its single moon. "Population estimate?" Lazar asked, his voice barely audible. Tazia checked her readings twice before answering. Based on energy output and detected structures, approximately 12 billion on the planet alone, with another 3 billion in orbital habitats and installations. 12 billion. The entire Zarn Dominion, spanning hundreds of worlds, had a population of just over 20 billion. This single world. "Sir," Norak interrupted urgently, "our phase field has failed. We are fully visible to their sensors." Before Lazar could respond, the Phantom was engulfed in a blue energy field that froze it in place. On the view screen, they could see multiple Terran vessels converging on their position, including the Relentless. They knew, Lazar realized. They knew we were following them all along. The communications console chimed. With a sense of resignation, Lazar nodded to his officer to accept the transmission. Captain Jackson's face appeared, now wearing what Lazar recognized as a smile, though on a Terran it looked more predatory than amused. "Captain Lazar, I presume?" Jackson said. "Welcome to Sol System, home of the Terran Federation. We have been expecting you." "How did you detect us?" Lazar demanded. "Our phase field technology is impressive," Jackson acknowledged, "but fundamentally flawed. It creates subtle gravitational distortions that our sensors detected the moment you began following us. We allowed it, of course." "Allowed it?" Lazar repeated, confused. "Indeed. Fleet Admiral Jazorn needed to understand exactly what he's dealing with. Now you can return and show him. Jackson's expression hardened. The coordinates for this system will be purged from your navigational computers, of course. You won't find your way back here without our help. But you will be allowed to return to Dominion space with a message. Lazar swallowed his pride. What message? The Terran Federation is expanding into this sector. We will not tolerate the subjugation of sentient species. The Dominion's days of unopposed conquest are over. As Jackson spoke, the view screen split to show multiple views of the Terran system. Massive shipyards constructing vessels that dwarfed even the Relentless. Defense platforms with weapons that made Dominion technology look primitive by comparison. And something else, hundreds of wormhole gates, stable and permanent, connecting to points unknown. This is but one world of many in the Federation, Jackson continued. We would prefer peaceful relations with the Dominion, but we are fully prepared for the alternative. Your leaders have a choice to make. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Phantom in stunned silence. Lazar stared at the images still displayed on the view screen, his mind racing to comprehend the implications. Sir, Tazia said quietly, if these readings are accurate, and this is just one of their worlds. I know, Lazar replied grimly. The Dominion isn't facing a new species. We are facing an interstellar power that might be stronger than we are. He straightened in his chair, prepare a complete report for Fleet Admiral Jazorn. Every detail, every scan, every word spoken. The High Command needs to know exactly what we are dealing with. As the Phantom was escorted away from the Terran homeworld by a squadron of ships even more impressive than the Relentless, Lazar gazed back at the shining blue planet. For the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before, the cold certainty that he was witnessing the beginning of the end for the Zarn Dominion. Unless, of course, the Dominion could find a way to destroy this Terran Federation before they fully established themselves in the sector. And Lazar knew exactly who would be tasked with developing such a plan. Grand Strategist Velar stood before the High Council of the Zarn Dominion, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the harsh lights of the Chamber of Decisions. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed tactical simulations of various engagement scenarios between Dominion forces and the newly discovered Terran Federation. Every simulation ended the same way, with the annihilation of Dominion forces. This cannot be accepted, declared High Chancellor Zyron, his ancient face twisted with rage. You are telling us that this upstart civilization possesses technology that renders our entire military obsolete? Velar's expression remained neutral despite the Chancellor's tone. She had spent 6 months analyzing the data brought back by Captain Lazar, consulting with the Dominion's best scientists and tacticians, and her conclusions were inescapable. The evidence is clear, Your Eminence. The Terran Federation's technological capabilities exceed our own by at least 2 centuries of development. Their energy weapons, defensive systems, and faster-than-light technology are all significantly advanced compared to our own. How is this possible? Demanded Councillor Mraz, the oldest member of the High Council. The Dominion has ruled this sector unchallenged for 3,000 years. We have absorbed the technologies of hundreds of conquered species. How could we have missed the existence of such a power? Because they weren't here, Velar explained patiently. Based on our analysis of their wormhole technology, the Terrans come from a distant part of the galaxy, perhaps even another galaxy entirely. They have only recently expanded into our sector. Fleet Admiral Jazorn, now promoted to Supreme Military Commander after Varric's disgrace, stepped forward. What are our options, Grand Strategist? Surely the mighty Dominion can find a way to overcome these humans. Velar gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show a new simulation. There are 3 potential strategies. First, we could attempt a massive, overwhelming assault with our entire fleet. The simulations give this a 7% chance of success, with an estimated 93% loss of our forces. Murmurs of dismay rippled through the council chamber. Second, we could attempt to develop countermeasures to Terran technology. Our scientists estimate this would take between 50 and 70 years, during which time the Terrans would continue to expand their influence and likely develop even more advanced systems. And the third option? Prompted the High Chancellor. Velar took a deep breath. What she was about to propose was anathema to 3 millennia of Dominion policy. We negotiate. We establish diplomatic relations with the Terran Federation and seek a peaceful coexistence. Outrage exploded across the chamber. Councillors leapt to their feet, shouting objections and accusations of cowardice. Velar stood impassively until the High Chancellor raised a hand for silence. "You suggest we treat with these creatures as equals?" Xeron asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "That we abandon our divine right to rule over lesser beings?" "I suggest we adapt to a changed galaxy," Velar replied calmly. "The Dominion has survived for 3,000 years because we are pragmatic. When faced with a superior force, the wise choice is not to rush into destruction, but to find a new path forward." Before the Chancellor could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber, a serious breach of protocol that silenced all present. "Your Eminence," the aide gasped, "Terran ships have entered the Dominion core systems. At least 30 vessels, including what appears to be their flagship." Chaos erupted again, but this time with an edge of panic. The core systems were the heart of the Dominion, containing their homeworld and most important military installations. No enemy had penetrated their defenses in the entire history of the Empire. "How?" demanded Jazorn. "Our defensive grid should have detected any wormhole formations." "They didn't use wormholes, Supreme Commander," the aide explained. "They just appeared. Our sensors detected a strange subspace distortion, and then they were there." Velar's mind raced. A new form of FTL travel? One that bypassed conventional space entirely? The technological implications were staggering. "They are hailing us, Your Eminence," the aide continued. "Their flagship is requesting direct communication with the High Council." Chancellor Xeron looked to Velar, his earlier anger replaced by something she had never seen in him before: fear. "Your Council Grand Strategist?" "We should hear what they have to say," Velar advised. "Their presence in the core systems demonstrates that our military options are even more limited than we thought." The Chancellor nodded slowly, then gestured to the communications officer. "Put them through." The holographic display shifted to show a Terran face, not Captain Jackson, but an older human with silver hair and a weathered face. He wore an elaborate uniform festooned with medals and insignia. "Greetings to the High Council of the Zarn Dominion. I am Grand Admiral Elizabeth Reyes of the Terran Federation. I apologize for our unexpected arrival, but we felt a direct conversation would be more productive than continued misunderstandings." Chancellor Xeron drew himself up to his full height. "You have committed an act of war by entering Dominion space uninvited, Admiral. Your presence here could be considered an invasion." The human's expression remained pleasant, almost amused. "If we intended invasion, Chancellor, this conversation would not be taking place. Our presence here is a demonstration, not an act of aggression." "Or a demonstration of what, precisely?" asked Velar, stepping forward. "Of the futility of military conflict between our civilizations," Reyes replied. "We have been monitoring your strategic discussions. Your Grand Strategist Velar's assessment is remarkably accurate, for which she deserves commendation." A chill ran through the chamber. They had been watching? Listening to the High Council's most secret deliberations? "What do you want?" Chancellor Xeron asked bluntly. "The same thing we communicated 6 months ago: an end to the Dominion's policy of conquest and subjugation. We propose a treaty that would acknowledge the sovereignty of all currently free worlds in this sector and establish a process for increasing autonomy for worlds currently under Dominion control." "You expect us to simply surrender our empire?" Zorn sputtered. "Not surrender, Supreme Commander. Transform," corrected Reyes. "The Zarn Dominion has existed for 3,000 years. Surely in all that time you have considered that ruling through fear and military might is not the only path to prosperity." Grand Strategist Valar found herself nodding slightly before catching herself. The human's words echoed thoughts she had harbored privately for decades, heretical notions that the Dominion's aggressive expansion had reached its natural limits even before the Terrans arrived. What guarantees would we have that the Terran Federation wouldn't simply replace the Dominion as the ruling power in this sector? Valar asked. Admiral Reyes smiled. A fair question. The treaty would include mutual defense pacts, technology exchange provisions limited initially, and the establishment of a multi-species council to govern sector-wide affairs. She paused. The Terran Federation has no interest in Empire, Grand Strategist. We expanded into this sector not for conquest, but because we detected the distress calls of dozens of worlds suffering under Dominion rule. And if we refuse these terms? Chancellor Zyron demanded. Reyes's expression grew serious. Then we would be forced to more aggressive demonstrations of our technological superiority. We would prefer to avoid that path. Despite what you may believe, Terrans do not seek conflict. But we will not stand by while sentient beings are oppressed. Silence fell over the council chamber as the implications sank in. Finally, it was Valar who spoke. "I recommend we establish a diplomatic delegation to discuss these terms in detail, Your Eminence. The Terrans have demonstrated both their capabilities and their restraint. Had they wished to destroy us, they could have done so already." Chancellor Zyron looked from Valar to Admiral Reyes, then to the other councillors, who nodded reluctantly. The moment stretched, 3,000 years of history and tradition hanging in the balance. Then, with a barely perceptible slump of his shoulders, he made his decision. "Very well. The Dominion will enter into preliminary discussions regarding this treaty." He straightened, attempting to maintain some dignity. "But know this, Admiral Reyes. The Zarn do not forget, nor do we forgive easily. This may be the beginning of a new era, but it is not one we entered by choice." Admiral Reyes nodded solemnly. "Few great changes in history come by choice, Chancellor. But the truly great civilizations are those that can adapt when they must." She smiled again. "I believe the Zarn have that potential. My diplomatic team will contact yours within the day to begin formal discussions." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in profound silence. Slowly, the councillors began to disperse, murmuring among themselves about the unthinkable changes facing the Dominion. Valar remained, staring at the tactical displays, still showing simulations of battles that would now, hopefully, never take place. Fleet Admiral Zorn approached, his expression grim. "Do you truly believe we can trust these Terrans?" he asked quietly. Valar considered the question carefully. "Trust is earned, Admiral, but their actions thus far suggest they are true to their word. They could have destroyed our fleet 6 months ago, yet they chose to disable rather than annihilate. They could have invaded our core systems in force, yet they came with a diplomatic proposal instead. And what of the Dominion? What becomes of 3,000 years of history?" Valar gazed out at the stars visible through the council chamber's vast window. "History isn't ending, Admiral. It's simply taking a new turn. The Dominion has always prided itself on being the most powerful force in the galaxy." She smiled slightly. "Perhaps now we can pride ourselves on being the most adaptable." As the news spread throughout the Dominion worlds of the Terran arrival, of the impending treaty, of the end of the age of unchallenged conquest, reactions ranged from outrage to relief. But on hundreds of subjugated worlds, including the recently conquered Pelaxian homeworld, celebrations erupted spontaneously as the oppressed populations realized that, for the first time in memory, there was a power in the galaxy strong enough to challenge the Dominion. And it all began with a single battleship, entering a battlefield where no one had dared to stand against the mighty Zarn for 3,000 years. The galaxy would never be the same again,